All right. So before I get started, I'd love to just get to know who is on this webinar. I'll definitely introduce myself. Um, but before I do so, I'm wondering if you can all just say a quick hello and let me know if you're a student or a professor, um, and sort of how you are related to the Heinz Institute.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi,
I can jump in and
Rob.
start with.
How are you?
I'm
Good to
good.
see you.
Likewise. I'm Rob. I'm an adjunct professor at Heinz, teaching ENT 200 and the 300 Intro to Design Thinking and Ideation. So.
Good to see you, Rob.
Likewise.
Hi, Lisa. My
friend.
name is
Hi, Chuck.
Hi. My name is Chuck Miller. I'm a member of Lyric. I teach a writing course through Lyric, which is associated with Iona, and I'm interested in what you have to say about storytelling.
Got it. Great. Welcome. All right. Anyone else want to share and say a hello? Or else we'll jump right into this. So this webinar is entitled Storytelling, but in reality, it relates to people who are launching or who are running businesses, but in reality, it can actually apply to many different parts of your life, any types of projects that you're launching where you want to get buy-in from others, and how you can sort of compel them to sort of take interest, get involved, invest in the case of business owners, etc. So in reality, I'm going to focus this a little bit about sharing stories as a founder of a business, and also sharing the value proposition of a business that you might be bringing to market. But as I mentioned, for some of you, if you are not actually in the area of business, you can actually think of how this applies to other parts of your life, and then sort of bringing to bear, again, a project, something that you care about, etc. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am a new adjunct professor at the Heinz Institute. I teach a course called Business Model Generation, but I have actually been teaching for many, many years in many different places. I do a lot of work down in Philly at UPenn and at Wharton, teaching on consulting skills management, helping students who are in arts and sciences think about careers in business and entrepreneurship. And I do a lot of program development for many local programs that are building entrepreneurship programs. My background is actually also in business strategy consulting. I started out advising large companies on their business strategy, but realized that all the fun is really helping smaller entrepreneurs. And about, I want to say 18 years ago, I founded my own business, which is called Business Boosters, which primarily helps to promote small businesses and get them off the ground and growing. I happen to have an interest in women-owned businesses, and I am also very interested in social enterprises, as in just some other things that I've been busy with over the years. I've also founded a nonprofit. I love to volunteer in the community, and I'm also an angel investor, so I have some idea of what it's like to sit on the other table of entrepreneurs' pitch presentations. So that's a little bit about me. So I'm going to talk about why do we call this, why am I calling this presentations about storytelling? And it's basically because storytelling really enables investors, employees, partners, anyone you're doing business with, sort of what you're about as a person and what your business is about, and the impact that you hope to make on the world, on your consumers, customers, students, whoever your stakeholders are. And I'm going to start talking about storytelling through the lens of what I will call an impact statement. And for those of you who are wondering what's an impact statement, it basically summarizes the difference that your venture will make in the world. It sort of answers the question of, so what, or who cares about this project or this business that you're working with? It conveys the motivation behind the venture. It sort of states what you're doing to make a positive change in the world and on the lives of the customers that you serve. It talks a little bit about the results of your initiatives and what you're hoping to achieve. And it also talks a little bit about why are you embarking on this journey? Why are you making the effort to undertake this journey, this project, this business? So it's a little bit more of sort of what I would call the personal behind your story. And by infusing something of sort of a story or sort of the personal narrative, you're making your argument, your pitch, your story, your project, sort of all the more appealing to others and sort of convinces them to join you on this journey. So just to talk a little bit about this impact statement, which I'm talking about, a couple of other things that that it will demonstrate is it talks about how your work makes lives in the people and the communities that you serve. As the CEO of a small business or the head of a project, it's your role to be a steward for the purpose of that project or that new venture. And it's also very important for helping you navigate the complex world of entrepreneurship. And what I mean by that is that there are many entrepreneurial ventures that are launched each day, but it helps you to sort of form sometimes a roadmap for what you believe in and how you want to achieve your vision over the long term. So an interesting little statistic is that many business leaders actually don't have a strong sense of their purpose. It's actually fewer than 20% claim that they have a strong sense of purpose, and even fewer can actually distill their purpose into a concrete statement. So for all of those of you who've joined me today, good work. You're already sort of a step ahead. And it's really sort of a shame for all these business owners who haven't really thought about sort of why they're here and what the impact is that they want to make, because being able to articulate that is sort of half the battle to get people on your side and to buy into what you're doing. So I'm going to now talk a little bit about what an impact statement looks like, because my hope is that I will help you each to develop your own impact statements. And at a very high level, it's an overview of who you are and what makes you tick. So what are some of the life or educational or professional experiences that may have brought you to this moment? So sort of what you're bringing of yourself to this initiative. It's a clear description of the issue or problem your venture addresses. So it's sort of the why you are doing this. And then it's a statement of the actions that you're taking to resolve the problems. It's a little bit of the how. And then finally, and a very key part of this is actually the what. You know, what are the benefits? What are you hoping to achieve? What are the benefits to society, to the environment, to your community, to individuals, and sort of what those results might be. And those could be qualitative benefits or quantitative benefits. And when I say quantitative, I mean things like number of people served, you know, number of percent improved lives, percent of time saved, things like that, or it can be more qualitative. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to write an impact statement. And again, this presentation focuses, you know, in a way, it focuses more on entrepreneurs, but I think that there are a lot of applications to other areas of your life and other types of initiatives. So a couple of tips for writing a great impact statement is that when you're sharing it with people, always keep it short. And I think that's a rule you're probably hearing more and more now as people have shortened attention spans. Get right to your point, be specific, and use numbers when possible to sort of illustrate the benefit of what you're undertaking. Make it very personal and address who you are as a person and as a leader. So don't be afraid to use more personal words, and I'm going to give you a few that you can potentially use. Include meaningful and purpose-infused language. So share things about, you know, your mission and why you are doing what you're doing. Focus on the future. Always keep your audience in mind and what might sort of pull at them and really kind of speak to them and their interests. Try not to use jargon or techie language. So just be yourself and and sort of natural if you can. Hang on, I'm just letting in one more person. And focus more on sort of the impact of your venture as opposed to sort of the how. You'll have an opportunity to talk about the how when people are asking you questions about investing in your business, but focus mostly on sort of what's the grammar, what's the impact that it'll create. And then of course, always be careful when you're putting together an impact statement to check spelling and grammar. I'm sort of required to say that one. So one of the things that you can start out with when you're thinking about your impact statement or sort of the story you're going to tell is, who are you telling the story to? Who's your audience? In the case of entrepreneurs, very often it's four groups. It's your investors, those people who will actually give you the money to grow your business. And they may ask questions like, well, why should we believe in you? Why should we invest? How impactful is the idea? What's the likely financial return? And, you know, do you have in you, or do you have kind of the grit in you to make you succeed? And very often as an investor and with investors that I've worked with, this impact statement might be the most important part of your pitch presentation. It's sort of like, you know, why am I buying into you as a person, and why should I trust you to be successful in the future? Another important audience of your impact statement are your customers. Those are the people who will be buying for you or buying into you, into your venture. And your customers for entrepreneurs are those people who are buying from you. If some of you are instructors, academics, it might be your students, might be your customers, those who are sort of deciding whether to partake in a project or take your class. Again, same kind of thing, you know, why should we believe in you? Why should we buy from you, or take the time to listen to you? How much will this impact my life? So in the case of those of you who might be teachers, you know, how will the information I'm going to learn from this class benefit me, or be of value to me? Then another segment we have are employees. For those of you who are potential or future business owners, ultimately you're going to have to think about bringing on in employees, and it's going to be important to convince them as well on why they should believe in your product, and why they should commit their time to you and actually work with you. They'll ask a lot of the same questions that the other two groups will, which is, what kind of impact will I make because I'm working with you? And is it worth my time and financial return? And how likely is it that this project or venture will succeed? And how likely is it that I am to succeed? And then finally, you get partners, which can be really anybody that you work with in growing your business or your initiative. So it's, in the case of business owners, it might be people that help you to market, that provide products or materials to help you grow. It may be people that you're interested in joint venturing with. Again, you need to convince them that by working with you, it's sort of, it's going to be a win-win. And it's not just necessarily financial. It's sort of, again, are you the kind of person that I want to work with, where I feel like I will achieve success from your success? Does anybody have any questions about this audience, or even want to share some stories about sort of having to make their case to different audience segments?
Hello, my name is Ashley,
Hi, Ashley.
and I'm currently working on a makeup beauty startup.
Mhm.
So the thing that a lot of people like to tell me is that the beauty industry is very oversaturated. But personally, I know when I'm dealing with makeup, I have a few pain points, like that it's not really customized towards me that much because I am a woman of color. So I was wondering, like, what would you say can best make you stand out in a market that maybe is a little bit crowded, but you're really passionate about it?
You know, I think that you are, you know, you're serving a specific or unique market niche, I assume. And I think what's important for you is just to talk about what made you realize that there was a need in the market, and sort of say, well, what, and be able to communicate that pain point for yourself. And sort of say, you know, what you saw from yourself, what you saw of peers, and how you wanted to make their lives better. And, you know, what were there things that you saw or other products that sort of inspired you, or maybe targeted other markets, and you said, you know, I want to work for the specific demographic in the same way that I've seen other companies be successful. I think it's just sort of telling a little bit of the story of where you're coming from. And then you can even, even sharing things like if you've done built prototypes already or showed other people your concepts, you can share things like quotes of, how people were inspired by your product or how they may have reacted to your description of what you're trying to introduce. Those are all sort of good ways to start. I'm going to actually walk you through again some sort of a step-by-step of things that you can communicate to your audience. So hopefully that'll help you flesh some things out as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Anyone else that has questions up until now? Okay. By the way, Rob, I'm gonna give a little shout out to you. Rob has a wonderful business called the DAE, the Digital Arts Experience.
Yeah.
And I know so much about it because my daughters were customers. And one of the things that I always think about in Rob's case is his customers were obviously the kids that he was serving, but it was also very much the parents were part of his audience. It was sort of everybody that's involved in the buying process and needed to buy into the great classes that he offered. So for a lot of parents, I assume it was sort of like, why should I send my kid here? Why should I take the time to drive them every day after school? And for a lot of the students, it was also sort of like, what are you going to show me or teach me that I don't know already? And Rob's done a great job of that.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate it. Yeah, and if I may, just for a moment, just the value of storytelling is, for us in terms of appealing to both the students and the parents, we sort of thought about like, what are the different personas? What are the different stories for the different types of students and like what they lack and why coming to digital arts experience will fulfill that. So it was really almost like writing, a model of each different type of student and what their story is and sort of their story coming into the digital arts experience and how their experience with us affected them and sort of the story outward. And then it was relevant to both the parents and the students for that reason.
And that's actually a great point, which is that your impact statement can really be tailored to different people that you serve. And Rob, I love what you said. It's funny because in my class, we were just talking about customer segments last night. And one of the things we were talking about is to really understand your audience. It's a great idea to create user profiles of sort of who might be the people that are ultimately interacting with you. So it might be the profile of the 10-year-old student and the 16-year-old student and the working parent, or sort of, and actually trying to envision who is that person? What do they look like? What do they say? What do they think about? And really being empathetic to what that audience member or potential customer might be thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's funny, like everybody's needs in each one of those user groups might be a little bit different. So that's just a great exercise in really segmenting your market and understanding what their needs are and potentially how to sell to them as well. So I think both from sort of an empathy and design thinking standpoint and a very direct sales standpoint, I think that's such a good exercise.
I actually gave, for those of you who are a little bit more creative out there, one of the things I suggested to my students is you can almost even create a visual mural or a visual, I don't know what you would call it, in interior design. I think they call it a mood board, but sort of you can envision who you're pitching to and actually put up sort of pictures of what they look like, things that they're interested in thinking of. And that way you can really get into their head and try to understand, what it is that would appeal to them, sort of more on an emotional level. Okay, so we're going to move on and talk about the different pieces of an impact statement and sort of this storyline that you're creating. And the first really starts with you and the who. Why are you the right person to lead this venture? And the kinds of things that I would love to hear about is, well, why are you driven to achieve? What's your purpose in life? What's the magic that might make you tick, and sort of the passions you're bringing to this project? And what might you be like as a leader? And for those of you who get a little bit stuck here and say, well, I don't even know what to tell about myself, think back even to your childhood about what you especially loved doing, and what you were passionate about, and sort of how it made you feel. Or talk about challenging experiences in your life that you'd had to overcome and how they may have shaped you and driven you to this effort that you want to create. even just talking about things that you enjoy and that you're passionate in life, passionate about in life are great things to share. And believe it or not, as you share these types of things with your audience, your passion will come through just by talking about some of these personal stories. So dig back, even if it has to be to a long time ago. The next piece of the impact statement is what I'd call the why. It's sort of why this venture is worth pursuing. And for this, the why, it's sort of, again, thinking about your different audiences and why this might be worthwhile to your different audiences. So it's answering things like, what problem is your company trying to address or alleviate? Or what, even better, it might even be something like, what are the consequences for not addressing the problem? So here is where you may want to talk about, why there's a need for this. I had launched, I had helped to co-found a nonprofit a number of years ago to help to train women who were out of the workforce to join back into the workforce by developing skills through advising small businesses in their local communities. So they were learning skills to help them go back into the workforce, but they were also helping the communities that they served with business advice. So in a way, for us, the why was, the importance of empowering women with the skills that they need to go back into the workforce, that there's a large population that really had a lot to contribute to their communities. And also, by enabling them, we were able to create economic benefit in the community. So that sort of was a little bit of the why of our story. Does anybody have some questions, by the way? I know I'm sort of running through this, but at any time you can stop me and we can talk about how some of this might apply to your businesses or initiatives. Okay, we're going to go off to the next point, which is the how. And this is another part of your impact statement or your story. And I would say that this is not necessarily the meat and potatoes of where you should focus, but it is important to think about in no more than about 3 steps how your idea works to solve the problems. So the problem that you serve to address. And I would say if you can try to boil this down into layman's terms and just sort of say, what are the 3 ways or the 3 things that you're doing that your project or your business works to solve the problem, I think that can give your audience at least some context about how you are creating the impact that you plan to create. The next piece is what I would call the what. So what will result from your effort? So in the case of any of your businesses, I'd want to know again sort of why will what you're doing matter in this world. So you can talk about things like, what's going to be the knowledge gain, the lives improved? Are you saving resources or saving time for people? Are you changing behaviors? Or is money being gained or saved? It's really, really important to sort of convince everybody, why will this matter? And that really sort of can wrap up the entire story, which is, in looking towards the future, what's going to be the impact today for your customers, maybe in 5 years out and even 20 years out. Think about how will whatever you're doing impact the world in some way or impact your community, and be able to help to share that vision with those that you're presenting to. And you can present this sort of end results or continuing results of why what you're doing matters, either qualitatively or quantitatively. So when we talk about qualitatively, it can be more about sort of emotions or feelings or things like quality of life or how people will learn, for example, or it can be quantitatively, which is also it's always good to sort of share some quantitative information or sort of metrics that you hope to target in the future. And those can be everything from amount of money gained, quantifying the time saved, the number of people that you are impacting or that you ultimately plan to impact. And I think sort of a mixture of some of the qualitative and the quantitative is important to use when you talk about what will result from your effort. So I'm going to give a couple of words that I think are great to use whenever you are putting together this sort of story or impact statement. And I'll find a way, by the way, to share this presentation with all of you afterwards so that you can refer back to this. But I like statements like impacts by, helps by, results in, eliminates, improves, demonstrates, enables, or saves. Those are great. Those are all great words to use, particularly when you're talking about sort of what's going to be the results or the ultimate impact. And I think that these are great words to sort of weave into whatever story that you're telling. So think about, I like to sometimes think about larger companies that that may sort of, be able to share sort of their impact on the world. I think about a company that I recently worked with. It's called eBags. It was founded by a woman in Westchester County. And it's basically, she was sort of the first one to launch these reusable shopping bags, which we often see now in many places. And for her, when she talked about her impact, it was a lot of, diminishing waste. It is sort of, improving people's abilities to carry things in an easy way and in an accessible way. It saves people money by not having to waste bags or have to use multiple bags. And it enables people to help the environment in different ways. So those are some of the words that she was able to use as she was sort of sharing her value proposition. So next, I want to talk a little bit about how you can get some input into your story. And it really starts with just sharing your story with as many people as possible and getting feedback. So sharing that story could be with people who are actually your ultimate customers or your ultimate clients, people who may ultimately work with you or partner with you, anyone who sort of represents those stakeholders. I recommend start sharing sort of the story of these sort of different components that I talked about and get feedback from them. What do they think? What do they want to know more about? What moved them? I even like the idea of sharing what you're doing with friends and family, because after all, they know you better than anybody else. And I think that they can really talk about, whether that personal you is really coming through in your story. So I would go ahead, if my next step for moving forward with this is I would start sharing who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, how you're going to do it, and what it will achieve. Make a goal of sharing it with about 3 to 5 people, and then use that to kind of continuously revisit and refine what you're communicating, and sort of note the feedback and see where there are sort of commonalities and common areas. I think that probably in all of your classes, and for all of you who are budding entrepreneurs, you know how important it is to do customer research and do focus groups or interviews. In a way, this might be a part of that process, which is, sit down and talk to your customers or those who you're going to be speaking to, and find out how they react to certain statements or things that you want to share with them. So what's next? You received some feedback, you're starting to put this all together now. And I created this chart, which again, I'm going to share this presentation with all of you. And I think this is a really great way to start with jotting down your ideas of what you want to communicate. It's again, that who, why, how, and what. So who you are and why you're doing this and why you're the right person to be doing this. The why, trying to compel people to understand whether this problem that you're addressing is worth pursuing. The how, which is how you'll accomplish it. Again, I'm recommending this is really compact, maybe about 3 points on that. And then what will result from your effort. And that's those quantitative and qualitative measures that really talk about what's going to be the impact both for the short term and the long term. So this is a template that I hope you use to actually start jotting down some notes, or you could just put it in a notebook and sort of copy it. And it's a nice place to start to gather your ideas together and then actually get some feedback on these different pieces. So a lot of people ask me, well, what does this sort of storytelling, or what does it look like, and what kind of format should I use to share my story or to share that impact statement that I keep referring to? And the answer is that there actually is no one given story or one given format. Different things will work for different people. For some people, it may be almost put together in a visual fact sheet where you're telling stories through pictures. So it may be things like, a little bit about the founder or about the person who's starting this initiative. You might talk about the people that you're impacting, why you decided to start the business, and some numbers on how you see yourself impacting the communities that you serve. For some people, it might be more like a template, which is this first one on the left here, almost like the template that I shared before. And for some of you, it actually may look much more like a kind of a written story that has different segments where you may have sort of a summary of what you're doing. And then you're addressing in different paragraphs each piece that I talked about, which is like the, again, sort of background on the founder's background and what brought you to do this project. Again, what you're doing, why, and how you're going to be doing it. And I think that this is sort of like a nice takeaway to share with people that you're trying to engage in participating or working with you. In the case of investors, very often they like to see PowerPoint presentations. And for those of you who are putting together pitch decks, very often your impact statement will be embedded in that pitch deck. But I want you to make sure that as you're looking at your pitch decks, that you're going back and making sure that you're answering these different points that I mentioned before. Again, are you somehow in your pitch deck conveying the who you are and sort of what brought you to this moment? Are you talking about what problem that you're solving? And sort of what you are offering to address, a pain or a gain? Are you talking a little bit about the how you're going to do that? And then again, the more important thing is what's the impact that you're going to leave with these investors so that they can see that by investing, they're coming along for a very powerful, impactful ride that will help them feel like they are impacting a large population, or that they are, very often, if they're thinking about financial gains, sort of what's going to be the financial impact that they're going to reap along the way. So that's a little bit about some of the formats. What I really want to spend some time on is really talking about any of your questions, because I'm guessing that some of what you are thinking about, sort of, this may apply to different issues, thoughts, or whatever else. Ashley, I appreciate your sharing your thoughts, but I wanted to know how I might be able to help. I guess what I'll put out there is I want to share my Iona address with any of you. And if any of you are putting together business plans or business model canvases, I am happy to talk with you directly, again, how you can sort of weave the storytelling into whatever you're doing. I think, again, it's really, really important, and probably for investors, it's almost one of the most important things that they base an investment decision on. It's not so much how glitzy your presentation is, or your cash flow statements and channels and things like that. It's not so much about how you're going to do your business, but again, the why, the what, and what impact it has in the future. I think that that's probably what moves more investors than anything else.